Football has evolved beyond the sport itself. Between transfer rumors and internet gossip, being a football prodigy in the current day feels more and more like being part of a reality show. If dealing with the pressure to perform was already a tough task for a teenager, it has become much worse the more footballers are seen as celebrities. Today we're gonna take a deep dive into the story of one of the players that has been affected the most by these changes over the last few years. I'll show you how he became Portugal's golden boy, how he nearly hit rock bottom, and how he seems to have now miraculously come back to world-class form. Welcome to the life of Renato Sanches. In 1997, Renato would be born, and soon after his mom and dad would decide to split up. With his dad leaving for France, Renato would be left with no birth certificate. He would be 5 years old, still living in Mosgueira, one of the poorest areas in the Portuguese capital, when his father decided to return to Portugal and finally file for Renato's birth certificate. This would one day expose the dark side of football to the world. But meanwhile, Renato, nicknamed Bolo by his Cape Verdean grandmother, would, like many other Portuguese kids, learn how to play football in the streets. As he heard the stories of the great players of other times, he could not have guessed the entire nation would one day believe that he was to be the next one in line. At the age of 8, he would be seen playing near the stadium of local club Águias da Mosgueira. António Quadros, the president of the club, would be so impressed by him that he would immediately convince him to go play for his team. Soon after, he would be able to put a face to the name Bulu, that he had so many times seen in the walls of his stadium. It seems Renato enjoyed writing his nickname in the walls wherever he went. After 1 year at the club, the call finally came. A Benfica scout had been made aware of 2 kids who played at Mosgueira, Renato and Elcinho. If the others seemed excited to go, Renato kept telling Antonio that it wasn't worth it. Why would he go? It's not like he would make it as a footballer. But Antonio insisted, and so they eventually went. On the day, it would take 15 minutes on the pitch before something happened. Antonio would have a Benfica representative approach him and ask him to come to their offices. Antonio, confused, would ask, "Did we do something wrong?" The man would reply, "We want to sign your little boy, the one with the braids." Benfica would pay only €750 and offer Águias da Mosgueira 25 footballs in exchange for the release of Renato, who would first tell the club he didn't want to play for them because their academy was too far away and he didn't want to have to go there every day without his friends. Once he made up his mind and started playing for the club, his talent was instantly recognized. Somehow, he was capable of consistently getting the ball and performing 20 to 30 meter runs, entering duel after duel and never losing it. It wasn't that he was the most technical player, but something in him made him far more resilient in possession than any other kid. Over the following 8 years, he would put his head down and continually work on developing his talent, as he would constantly be called up to play for Portugal's youth teams. His most impressive tournament would come in 2014, where he would join the under-17 national team with the likes of Ruben Dias and Ruben Neves. Renato would be one of the standout performers, scoring in the first match and being vital in their run, which would end as they got knocked out by England in the semi-finals. Regardless, Renato would be included in the team of the tournament. These excellent performances at the Euros were perhaps the encouragement Benfica needed to promote him to their B team, where he would keep impressing alongside with great exhibitions in the UEFA Youth League. That would grant him his first few training sessions with the first team. The next year, he seemed to take things to the next level. The idea of permanently promoting him to the first team would start being thrown around. The catalyst would come in the form of an incredible Youth League performance in which Renato would be heavily involved in the build-up and even score once, as Benfica defeated Galatasaray 11-1 in the Youth League. Renato would debut against Tondela, playing 14 minutes at the end of the match. Soon after, Benfica would show how much they believed Renato was a future superstar, renewing his contract and adding a release clause of €45 million. By the end of November, he would start being included in the starting 11, getting his Champions League debut and then getting a lot of media praise for his performance against rivals Braga. December brought him his first appearance at the iconic Estádio da Luz. Renato was about to enter the stadium and live out one of his childhood dreams when his mother told him, "Bolo, you gotta score a goal for me. I want to see you score." Renato, not known for scoring many goals, would not make her any promises. After 85 minutes on the pitch, where Renato had helped Benfica achieve a 2-goal lead, he would find himself with space to shoot 35 yards away from goal. And so, to make his mother proud, he would take the chance and shoot, becoming the youngest player to score a goal for Benfica in the 21st century, scoring one of the best goals of the season and one that would provide him with certified wonderkid status in Portugal. But Renato, in his mind, was still the same boy who didn't want to be far from his family, so that day, as the fans let out their final few roars, he left the stadium, crossed the Tejo River, and met his friends at Mosgueira. As he ordered a sandwich, Renato seemed unaware of the starstruck look in the eyes of the waiter. Renato would be the extra sparkle in a team that would already be shining bright. Over the remainder of the year, Benfica would go on to win the league and the League Cup, but it would be in the Champions League where Benfica would impress. Despite their domestic success over the last decades, Benfica have been tremendously disappointing at the highest level, but that year they would impress, only going out in the quarterfinals against Bayern Munich, who would narrowly miss the final. The first leg would end 1-0 to Bayern at the Allianz Arena, a narrow result that would have Portuguese newspapers claiming that, with Renato in the center of the field, the Eagles have shown Europe they wouldn't surrender to the German powerhouse. You could say Renato was making a strong first impression. The second hand would end in a 2-goal draw, as Renato once again impressively held down the midfield despite having to fight the likes of Arturo Vidal, Tomás Müller and Thiago Alcántara for possession. 1 month later, Bayern had secured his signing for a fee of 35 million euros that could be worth up to 80 million on objectives. They had been quick to pull the trigger, as Manchester United were already lurking for his signing. Once the deal was made public, Nani would come out and call out United for missing out on such a good signing. After the end of the season, Renato would once again be called up for the national team to take part in the friendly matches that preceded the Euro 2016. If in his first call-up, his performances had been lukewarm, this time around he would impress enough to earn himself a call-up for the tournament, making him the youngest ever Portuguese player to be called up, breaking the record that had previously been set by Cristiano Ronaldo. Once at the tournament, he would debut against Iceland, replacing João Moutinho in the final 19 minutes of the match. He would come back in the last match of the group stage, coming in as Portugal were trailing 2-1 against Hungary, desperate for at least a draw that would give them some hope of making it through as one of the best third-place sides. Renato's presence in the midfield would be essential, as Portugal would go on to score twice in 12 minutes, bouncing back from conceding in both occasions. As the match ended, Portugal would barely qualify to the last 16 stage, but one thing was sure: Renato deserved more time on the pitch. In the first match of the knockouts, he would be heavily involved in the counter-attack that would lead to the only goal of the match, and that, added to his incredible exploits as a relentless box-to-box midfielder, would earn him the Man of the Match award. In the quarterfinals, he would be even more impressive, scoring the equalizer as Portugal would go behind after an early goal by Lewandowski. Keep in mind, his goal would make him the youngest ever player to score a goal in the Euros knockout stages. After converting his shots in the eventual penalty shootout and having an impressive performance overall, Sanches would once again win the Man of the Match award. The semi-finals would be a breeze, and after a less flashy performance in the final against France, where Portugal struggled and Sanches was forced to dedicate most of his time to defensive work and counter-attacking, Portugal would be champions of Europe and Sanches would be crowned as the best young player in the tournament. Among all of this, I learned of one story that really touched my heart. António Quadros, the president of Águias de Mosgueira, who took Renato to his first ever trial with Benfica, went blind a few years before his professional debut and never got to watch him play for Benfica, or take this national team by storm and help them conquer their first ever trophy. But when talking about the subject, he made sure to say, "I may have not been able to see the match, but I still watched Renato. I watched over him with my heart." As Renato arrived in Munich, one thing became more clear than ever. Every minute he got to play for the club would be an incredible achievement. The 19-year-old would have to face the likes of Xabi Alonso, Thiago Alcántara, Arturo Vidal and Kimmich in the battle for a place in the squad. As you might imagine, no teenager would ever have a chance. Soon enough, Renato would have been reduced to a training buddy in the eyes of the other players. If once I heard Renato claim in an interview that his price tag didn't scare him, that he saw it as an achievement and it only fueled his game, being put to the side would be something that he would not be able to handle. Being a teenager, his self-esteem took a huge hit. Suddenly, the bold young midfielder we once met now seemed fragile, unable to impose himself. He seemed to shy away from duels and rush his passes like a young kid. In a way, at 19 years of age, he sort of was one. At this point, Renato needed to be brought back to a place of comfort, where he would hopefully ground himself once again and prepare to take over Europe once more. But Bayern made the foolish decision of loaning him out to Swansea, leaving him in a country that was the polar opposite of what he was familiar with, and further putting the thought in his head that he was finished, not good enough to play at the top. The decision to bring him to Swansea was very much influenced by the fact that their coach at the time, Paul Clement, had once been part of Ancelotti's staff and had promised him he would make Sanches his main project for the season. It didn't go as planned. Swansea struggled massively, and Renato seemed to be desperate to make a difference and carry them regardless of the difficulties. But as we already know, desperation only worsened his performances. 9 matches into his time at Swansea, Renato would meet Chelsea, and midway through the game, as he seemed to insist in rushing his passes, he would end up passing the ball into the advertising board on the side of the pitch, believing it was a teammate. This embarrassing moment was made worse as the coach subbed him off as retaliation, and the fans took on the task of making it a viral moment and continuously making a mockery out of the situation on social media. Renato's confidence was at an all-time low. A sign of hope would come as Carlos Carvalhal, a Portuguese coach familiar with Sanches, took over Swansea. But unfortunately, soon after that, Renato would be hit with a 3-month injury. By the end of the season, news would come out that Sanches was told that he would join one of Manchester United, PSG or Chelsea on loan. So imagine his shock when he ended up joining a relegation side at the Premier League. During his recovery, he was sent back to Portugal as Bayern believed time with his family in the place where he had made himself a star could help him regain his confidence. Eventually, he'd rejoined Bayern, now coached by Niko Kovac, for another season and another attempt at earning a spot in the squad. In his first match back, he would funnily enough meet his old club Benfica in the Champions League, and as he would go on to score his first goal for Bayern against them, some hope would come. But soon it would fade away, as Renato would go on to play even fewer minutes with Kovac than he had with Ancelotti. Despite the train wreck that his last few seasons had been, Renato, who by now was even being excluded from the national team, would be kept in Munich for a while. He would even play 3 more matches with Bayern, but then, in a post-match interview, he would set the relationship with the club ablaze, as he complained about game time and said it was his biggest desire to leave Bayern. There would be some back and forth with the board of the club, but eventually they would concede and a move to Lille would be set up as Sanches rejected proposals by Leverkusen and Hoffenheim, as he seemed more than eager to end his time at the Bundesliga. Oddly enough, at Lille, Sanches, more famously known for his midfield presence, would end up playing in attack, taking over the right flank as the players Lille brought in hopes of filling the void left by Nicolas Pepe's exit to Arsenal, would all fail to step up to the task. However, Renato would perform excellently out of position, so much so that he would win Lille Player of the Month for both December and January. Unfortunately, as Renato finally locked down a starting spot, the pandemic break would hit, and the French league would be one of the few not to be restarted, which would leave Lille 1 point off of the qualification to the Champions League, something that could very well have been conquered, considering the form they were in. This blow led to the exits of Gabriel Magalhães and Victor Osimhen, which could be seen as a sign that something bad was coming for Lille. But then, a revival came. Maignan had an incredible season on goal. The arrival of Sven Botman, paired with the experience of Josep Fonte, made up for the best centre-back duo in the league. In midfield, Benjamin Andre helped guide the young talents, including Renato Sanches, who despite missing out 15 matches due to injury, showed to be back to some of his best form. And in front, the signing of 35-year-old Burak Yilmaz made all the difference in the world, as somehow Lille would go on to beat the mighty PSG to the league title by a single point, even beating them at the Parc des Princes with 5 matches to go. If Renato's return to good form, now once again going forward with ease, cutting through defenses with magic through passes and entering duels for fun, and his involvement in this historic achievement had already led some of Europe's best clubs to consider him as a target once again, all would add up over summer as Renato Sanches would once again call him up for the national team. Though Portugal would go out early in the last 16 of the Euro 2020, Sanches' cameo with Portugal was the perfect showcase of his value. It would absolutely tear up the pitch as he came in late against Hungary, creating the much-awaited goal after an heroic run all the way from his own half. Against Germany, despite the loss, Renato clearly brought new energy to the pitch and nearly helped Portugal reduce their disadvantage. After this, Renato would earn a place in the starting 11 with his best performance coming against Belgium, where Portugal completely dominated the match despite the loss and much thanks to Renato's exploits from midfield. And so, we arrive at the present day, where Renato is being linked with many clubs like Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal, Juventus and even Real Madrid, as the world seems to have finally recognized that he was just a talented player put into a bad situation. Now, we have to just wait and see, because we might be witnessing one of the great comebacks football has to offer. So yeah, that was Renato Sanches' career in a video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe to help out the channel. It really helps out so much. Like, come on, if you like the videos, why not? So yeah, that's it. See you next week. Bye. Next week.